Christmas lights, wreath on the door.
All done, Mrs. Hess. I'm exhausted and sweaty, but
So you can tell the neighborhood I stiffed you in a snow room. Silly, inconsiderate fool who took my... Consider this your fate. I will use this. Christmas trees.
December 1997. The holiday movie season is packed with prestige pictures. Titanic is weeks from dominating everything. Good Will Hunting is earning Oscar buzz and families have plenty of choices. Then 20th Century Fox drops Home Alone 3 into theaters and the reaction is immediate. Confusion. Where's Macaulay Culkin? Where's Joe Pesci yelling about sticky bandits? Why is this kid we've never seen before defending a house in suburban Chicago against completely different criminals? The film arrives not as a sequel in the traditional sense, but as a soft reboot, same franchise name, completely new everything else. And that bold choice to walk away from the established formula while keeping the core concept, that's what makes this film fascinating to dissect. Because it's essentially John Hughes asking, can the premise survive without the original characters? The answer, financially speaking, was yes. Against that 32 million budget, Home Alone 3 pulled in just over 79 million worldwide. Not the astronomical numbers of its predecessors, but profitable enough to justify its existence. Critics weren't kind, but audiences showed up anyway, drawn by brand recognition and the promise of elaborate slapstick. What they got was something genuinely different. A protagonist who wasn't a wisecracking chaos agent like Kevin McAllister, but a methodical, tech-savvy kid with chickenpox and a weirdly advanced understanding of surveillance. Alex Pruitt, played by 8-year-old Alex D. Linz, brings a quieter energy to the role. Less theatrical mugging, more genuine problem solving. And the villains aren't bumbling local burglars. They are international spies working for a North Korean-linked terrorist cell, hunting a 10 million missile-cloaking microchip. The stakes are wildly higher on paper, even if the execution keeps things family-friendly. This was Raja Gosnell's first time in the director's chair, which is crucial context. Gosnell had edited both previous Home Alone films under Chris Columbus, so he understood the franchise's rhythm intimately. The beat-by-beat pacing of trap sequences, the importance of reaction shots, the precise timing needed to make physical comedy land. But this wasn't Columbus' sentimental, warm-hearted approach. Gosnell came from editorial, which means his brain works in cuts, in visual efficiency. You can feel that throughout the film. There's less dwelling on emotional beats, fewer lingering shots of family warmth. Instead, the camera focuses on mechanics, how things work, how traps are set, how spaces are navigated. It's a more technical film than its predecessors, almost clinical in how it presents Alex's preparation. That shift in directorial sensibility changes the entire texture of the experience. John Hughes stayed on as writer and producer, which provides the through line connecting this film to the originals. Hughes had perfected the formula by now: a resourceful kid, bumbling adults who don't listen, a home as battleground, and elaborate Rube Goldberg-style traps that punish intruders with cartoonish violence. But here's where it gets interesting. Hughes was writing for a different kind of kid. Kevin McAllister was theatrical, performative, constantly addressing the camera with asides and reactions. Alex Pruitt is an observer first, a reactor second. He watches the criminals through binoculars, he records them with his sister's camcorder. He quietly gathers evidence before acting. The script gives him fewer one-liners and more silent planning sequences. It's a personality shift that reflects mid-90s sensibilities. Kids were becoming more tech literate, more comfortable with gadgets and surveillance tools. Alex doesn't just outsmart the villains through clever traps, he outmaneuvers them through information gathering. The plot mechanics hinge on a MacGuffin, that microchip hidden inside a toy RC car. Four criminals steal it from a defense contractor in Silicon Valley: Peter Beaupre, Olek Krupa, Alice Ribbons, Rya Kihlstedt, Burton Jernigan, Lenny Von Dolen, and Erlanger David Thornton. They hide the chip in a remote controlled car to smuggle it past airport security, but in a classic mix up, an elderly woman named Mrs. Hess accidentally takes their bag instead of her own. The criminals track her to a Chicago suburb and begin systematically searching every house on her street. Meanwhile, Alex shovels Mrs. Hess's driveway and she gives him the RC car as thanks, completely unaware it contains classified military technology. Alex goes home, discovers he has chickenpox, and is stuck in the house for days. That enforced isolation becomes the setup for everything that follows. What's smart about this premise is how it justifies Alex being home alone without repeating the family forgets kid gag from the first film or the wrong plane setup from the second. Here, Alex's parents don't abandon him. His mom works from home, his siblings have school, his dad is away on business. But chickenpox means Alex can't go anywhere, and during the day he's genuinely alone while everyone else maintains their schedules. It's a more grounded reason for isolation, less dependent on cartoonish parental negligence. The film doesn't have to stretch believability to get its protagonist into position. Illness does that work naturally. The criminals are a different breed from Harry and Marv. These aren't desperate, down on their luck burglars. They are professionals with international connections working for a foreign power. Beaupre is the cold, efficient leader. Alice is athletic and ruthless. Jernigan is the tech expert. Unger is the muscle. They operate with military precision at first, using surveillance equipment, coordinating their search patterns, dressing to blend into suburban environments. But here's the tonal tension. They're written as serious threats in the early sections, then gradually subjected to the same slapstick degradation as any Home Alone villain. By the climax, they are slipping on ice, getting hit with tools, and stumbling through trap after trap with increasingly cartoonish reactions. The film can't quite decide if they are dangerous or incompetent, so it splits the difference, which creates an uneven tone. Are we supposed to be worried for Alex, or just waiting for the next pratfall? The supporting cast includes a young Scarlett Johansson as Alex's older sister Molly, which feels like trivia now, but wasn't notable in 1997. She has maybe a dozen lines and exists primarily to establish that Alex is the youngest, most overlooked member of his family. His older brother Stan is a typical teenage jerk. His mom Karen works in home healthcare, which gets her out of the house during the day. His dad Jack is traveling for work in Cleveland, which is why he misses the entire invasion. The family dynamics are functional but underdeveloped. These people exist to be absent when needed and return for the resolution. There's none of the lived-in warmth of the McAllister household from the first film. We don't get those big chaotic family breakfast scenes, the overlapping dialogue, the sense of a huge family ecosystem. The Pruitts feel like a standard issue movie family designed to fulfill plot requirements. Showmicha's Hess, played by Marion Seldes, is the key adult ally, though even she doesn't believe Alex when he tries to warn her about the criminals. She is lonely, talks to her parrot, and immediately bonds with Alex after he shovels her snow, a small kindness that sets the entire plot in motion. The film uses her isolation as a mirror for Alex's. Both are stuck at home, both are observant, both notice things others miss. When the criminals finally break into her house searching for the car, she's terrified but powerless. It's Alex who has to protect, not just himself but also vindicate her, proving the danger is real. That responsibility adds weight to his actions. He's not just playing defense, he's defending a neighbor who showed him kindness. The film's production was based in Chicago, using real suburban locations in Evanston, Illinois. The Pruitt house is an actual residence at 3026 Normandy Place, which grounds the action in physical reality. This isn't a soundstage set, it's a real home with real dimensions, which affects how Gosnell shoots the space. The geography has to be consistent because viewers can see outside through windows, can track movement through actual rooms. That realism constraint makes the trap sequences feel more plausible. When Alex rigs the house, we understand the layout because the camera establishes it clearly. The basement, the first floor, the upstairs hallway, the backyard. Each space is defined and mapped early, so when the chaos begins, we know exactly where everyone is and how the traps connect. The film arrived in a weird cultural moment for the franchise. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, had come out 5 years earlier in 1992, earning over 358 million worldwide and cementing the formula. But Culkin had aged out of the role, and Hughes knew audiences wouldn't accept a teenage Kevin McAllister doing the same shtick. So instead of forcing continuity, they rebooted with new characters while keeping the structure. It's the same strategy that would later become common with franchises, but in 1997, it felt strange. Sequels were expected to continue the story, not restart it. That's partly why critics were harsh. It felt like a cash grab using the Home Alone name without the Home Alone soul. But from a creative standpoint, it's a logical choice. The premise is strong enough to work with different characters. The real question is whether those new characters are compelling enough to carry it. Alex D. Linz was already a working child actor when he landed the lead. He'd appeared in One Fine Day with George Clooney and Michelle Pfeiffer the year before, playing a precocious kid with solid comic timing. Hughes and Gosnell needed someone who could handle long dialogue scenes, who could sell genuine fear and genuine cleverness without tripping into mugging. Linz brings a naturalistic quality to the role. He doesn't push for laughs, doesn't wink at the camera. When Alex is scared, Linz plays it straight. When Alex is planning, Linz goes quiet and focused. It's a more subdued performance than Culkin's, which works for this version of the story, but also makes the character less immediately iconic. Kevin McAllister was larger than life. Alex Pruitt feels like an actual 8-year-old who happens to be very smart. The villains are played by character actors who commit fully to the physical comedy. Olek Krupa, a Polish actor with a long career in both European and American films, gives Beaupre a chilly professionalism that slowly cracks as the traps accumulate. Rya Kihlstedt, an underrated performer, plays Alice with a mix of competence and escalating frustration. She is the most athletic of the group, which makes her repeated failures especially humiliating. Lenny Von Dolen and David Thornton round out the crew as Jernigan and Unger, each bringing distinct energy. Von Dolen is nervous and easily flustered. Thornton is dumb muscle who takes the most physical punishment. The script gives them personalities, not just roles, which helps the film avoid making them interchangeable goons. So, here's the starting point. A franchise reboot that keeps the premise but jettisons the characters. Directed by a first-timer with editorial instincts, written by John Hughes in formula mode and starring a young cast tasked with making this feel fresh rather than redundant. The film has to justify its existence separate from the original while delivering the same kind of escalating slapstick. It's a tough balance, and whether it succeeds depends on execution. On whether the traps are creative enough, whether Alex is likable enough, whether the stakes feel real enough. Over the next 100 minutes, the film will build from suburban mystery to full-blown siege, and the journey from quiet observation to chaotic defense is where the real craft lives. The opening act has to accomplish a lot. Introduce Alex and his world, establish the criminals and their mission, set up the MacGuffin mix-up and get everyone into position. It's pure setup, but setup done with efficiency. Gosnell knows we're here for the traps, so he moves quickly through exposition. The film doesn't linger on character development or thematic depth. It's lean storytelling designed to get us to the good stuff. And that approach, that willingness to trust the formula and focus on execution, is what we're about to unpack in detail. The film opens with efficiency, no wasted motion. We're in Silicon Valley, inside a sleek defense contractor's office where classified technology lives behind glass and security badges. The heist sequence is quick. Beaupre poses as a technician, Alice creates a distraction, and within minutes they've grabbed the microchip and disappeared. Gosnell shoots this with a cool professional detachment. No dramatic music swells, no lingering tension. It's almost documentary style, emphasizing that these criminals know what they're doing. The microchip itself is tiny, smaller than a fingernail, which becomes crucial later. It's hidden inside a toy car precisely because it's so small tuck it in the battery compartment and nobody would ever know. The airport sequence that follows establishes the mix-up mechanic. Mrs. the follows establishes the mix-up mechanic. Mrs. the Lab, Hess is traveling back from San Francisco with an identical black bag. The criminals check their bag at the airport, confident the chip is secure inside the toy car inside the bag. But in the security line, bags get shuffled and Mrs. Hess accidentally grabs theirs while they take hers. It's a classic mistaken identity scenario, the kind of plot device that's been used 1,000 times, but the film sells it through small details. We see the bags side by side, identical except for luggage tags nobody bothers to check. We see Mrs. Hess distracted by her boarding pass, the criminals focused on getting through security quickly. The swap happens in seconds, and nobody notices until much later. Cut to Chicago, and the tonal shift is immediate. The cold professionalism of the heist gives way to suburban normalcy. We meet Alex in his natural habitat, his bedroom, surrounded by books and gadgets, messing with a remote controlled toy. The film doesn't make a big deal about his intelligence. There's no dialogue where someone says, "Alex, you're so smart for your age." Instead, Gosnell just shows us. The camera lingers on Alex's workspace, circuit boards, batteries, a partially disassembled RC car he's been tinkering with. This kid knows how things work. He's curious about mechanisms, about systems. That curiosity isn't presented as precocious or showy. It's just who he is. His family dynamics get established quickly. Molly is on the phone, ignoring him. Stan is teenage level dismissive. Mom is juggling work calls and household management. Dad is packing for his Cleveland trip. It's a busy house where Alex is the youngest and therefore least prioritized. But here's the key difference from Kevin McAllister's situation. Alex isn't resentful about this. He doesn't act out or demand attention. He's quietly self-sufficient, comfortable being overlooked. When his mom asks him to shovel Mrs. Hess's driveway, he does it without complaint. It's just neighborly duty, and he likes Mrs. Hess anyway. The snow shoveling scene is where Alex and Mrs. Hess's relationship gets established, and Marian Seldes brings a gentleness to the role that makes you understand why Alex cares about her. She's not a stock quirky old lady character. She's lonely but dignified, grateful for small kindnesses. When she offers Alex the RC car as thanks, she's genuinely trying to give him something nice, unaware of what's hidden inside. "A man left this at my house," she says, referring to the criminal who briefly posed as a yard worker trying to search her garage. "I think he meant for you to have it." It's innocent, a simple exchange between neighbors, but it's the linchpin that brings the entire plot crashing into Alex's life. Alex takes the car home, and immediately something's off. It doesn't work. He flips it over, examines it, realizes the battery compartment has been tampered with. But he doesn't discover the chip yet. First, he has to get sick. The chickenpox diagnosis happens at school, and the film uses this cleverly. The school nurse spots the telltale red spots, and suddenly, Alex is quarantined, sent home, forbidden from leaving the house until the contagion period ends. His mom works from home, but has patient visits throughout the day. His siblings are at school. His dad is in Cleveland for the next week. The setup is complete. Alex will be home alone for hours at a time, and nobody will think anything is wrong because he's supposed to be resting. The chickenpox detail does more than justify his presence at home. It makes Alex physically uncomfortable, which affects his behavior. He's itchy, tired, running a low fever. He's not at his best, which means when things start getting weird with the criminals, his reactions are slower. He questions what he's seeing because he knows he's not feeling well. Maybe it's the fever making him paranoid. That self-doubt is crucial for building tension. The film needs us to believe Alex would hesitate before acting, and the illness provides that reason. Meanwhile, the criminals realize they have the wrong bag. The moment of discovery is played with perfect frustration. Bopra opens Mrs. Hess's bag at their rented house and finds sweaters, reading glasses, knitting supplies, no toy car, no chip. He goes very still, and you can see Krupa calculating the catastrophic implications. They've lost a 10 million piece of classified technology. Their employers vaguely defined as North Korean terrorists in the script, though the film keeps this intentionally murky, will not accept failure. This isn't a setback, it's a potential death sentence. The sequence where they track down Mrs. Delling billion piece of classified technology, Hess, is pure procedural. They use the luggage tag info, cross-reference with airline manifests, and pinpoint her address. It's surprisingly competent spycraft, which makes their later incompetence more jarring. But in these early scenes, the criminals are threatening. They work methodically, they communicate efficiently, they adapt to problems. Alice does surveillance from a parked car. Jernigan hacks into local utility records to confirm occupancy. Bopre poses as different service workers to gain access to neighboring houses. They are professionals executing a recovery operation. Alex first notices something's wrong when he is homesick. watching daytime TV with one eye out the window. Boredom makes you observant, and he's got nothing but time. He sees a suspicious car parked across the street for hours. He sees the same woman, Alice, walking past the house multiple times pretending to exercise but clearly scoping properties. He sees a pool cleaner, Unger knocking on doors in January, when every pool in Chicago is frozen solid. These details don't add up, and Alex's methodical brain starts cataloging them. This is where the film's pacing slows down intentionally, and it's a smart choice. Gosnell gives us time to sit with Alex's growing unease. There is no sudden action, just accumulating wrongness. A repairman who doesn't have the right tools, a delivery driver for a package that doesn't exist, four different strangers, all interested in the same stretch of suburban street. Alex watches through his window, and the film adopts his perspective. We see what he sees, mundane surfaces with threatening undercurrents. He tries telling his mom, but she's distracted by work. He calls his dad, but dad is in meetings and brushes him off with, "You're probably just bored being stuck inside." He tries telling Stan, who mocks him. Molly barely listens. The adults don't believe. The kid trope is a Home Alone staple, but here it's handled with more realism. Nobody thinks Alex is lying. They just assume he's misinterpreting innocent behavior because he's feverish and stuck at home. It's a reasonable assumption that happens to be wrong. Alex decides to gather proof. He takes his sister's camcorder, an artifact from 1997, a bulky thing that records to mini DV tapes, and starts filming the suspicious activity. He sets up near the window, uses his binoculars to zoom in, and records faces, license plates, patterns. It's junior detective work, but the film takes it seriously. Gosnell shoots these sequences with patience, letting us watch Alex watch the criminals. There's no montage, no time compression. We sit with him as he gathers evidence, and that patience builds investment. We are learning the rhythms of surveillance alongside him. The criminals eventually search Mrs. Hess's house while she's out, and Alex witnesses this through his window. He sees them break in through the back door, sees them tearing through her living room looking for the car. But here's the problem, the car isn't there. Alex has it. Mrs. Hess gave it to him days ago. The criminals don't know this yet. They are working from the assumption that she still has it. When they come up empty, they expand their search to the entire neighborhood, which means Alex's house is next on the list. But before the siege begins, Alex has to figure out why everyone wants this specific toy car. He takes it apart completely, removing panels, unscrewing compartments, and that's when he finds the chip. It's tucked inside the battery housing, barely visible. To Alex, it's just a weird circuit board, smaller and more sophisticated than anything he's seen. He doesn't immediately understand its military tech. He's 8 and home with chickenpox, not an expert in defense contracts. But he knows it's important. Chips this small, this precisely manufactured are expensive. Somebody wants it back badly. The film gives Alex a moment of realization that Linz plays with quiet intensity. He's sitting on his bedroom floor, the disassembled car spread around him, the chip in his palm. The camera pushes in slowly on his face as he connects the dots. Suspicious people, aggressive searching, hidden technology. He's not in danger from random burglars. He's in danger from professionals who'll do anything to recover this chip. And nobody in his family believes him yet. This is the pivot point where the film transitions from mystery to preparation. Act 1 ends with Alex understanding the threat and beginning to plan. He can't leave the house because of chickenpox quarantine. He can't convince the adults because they think he's overreacting. He can't give the criminals the chip because he's seen their faces, knows what they've done, and intuits correctly that they won't leave witnesses. So his only option is defense. He has to protect himself and Mrs. Hess until he can prove the danger is real and get actual help. The decision to turn his house into a fortress isn't made lightly. The film gives Alex a scene where he considers alternatives, calling the police directly, which fails because the desk sergeant dismisses him as a prank caller, trying to contact the FBI, which is impossible because he's a kid with no credibility, even attempting to warn the neighbors who think he's making up stories because he's bored. Every reasonable option gets exhausted before he commits to the Home Alone defense strategy. That groundwork matters. It makes his choice feel inevitable rather than arbitrary. Gosnell ends. Act 1 with Alex in his garage, surveying the tools and materials available. The camera pans across workbenches, storage shelves, everyday household items that will become weapons. Paint cans, ropes, pulleys, a lawnmower, snow equipment, his dad's toolbox. The film doesn't spell out what each item will become, that's saved for later, but the visual inventory establishes that Alex has resources. He's not improvising from nothing, he's working with what suburban garages naturally contain. The traps will be creative but plausible, built from materials any family might have. The first act accomplishes everything it needs to. It establishes Alex as resourceful but believable, sets up the criminals as capable threats, puts the MacGuffin in play, justifies the isolation to illness, and builds toward confrontation to escalating surveillance. The pacing is brisk without feeling rushed. We get character moments without dwelling on emotional depth. The tone stays light even as the stakes rise, which is the franchise's signature balance. Danger that's never too dark, comedy that's never too silly. What's interesting is how much patience the film shows in these early sections. Gosnell trusts the setup, doesn't rush to the traps, allows tension to build naturally through observation and discovery. It's classical thriller structure applied to family comedy. Alex isn't immediately defending his house, he's watching, learning, confirming his suspicions, exhausting alternatives. That methodical approach makes the eventual trap sequences feel earned. When the chaos begins, we'll understand exactly why it's necessary and how Alex got there. Act 2 kicks off with the criminals narrowing their search, and the film shifts into higher gear. They've eliminated most houses on the street through various infiltration methods, posing as repair workers, pretending to read meters, straight up breaking in when homes are empty. Each failure makes them more desperate, which means they're getting sloppier. Beaupre's calm leadership starts cracking. Alice becomes more aggressive. Jernigan's tech solutions get more invasive. Unger just wants to smash things and be done with it. The professionalism from the opening is eroding, and we're watching it happen in real time. Alex, meanwhile, is documenting everything. He's got hours of footage now. Faces, conversations captured through cracked windows, coordinated movements that prove these four are working together. The camcorder becomes his insurance policy. Even if they get the chip back, he's got evidence, but that evidence only matters if he survives to share it, which is the problem. The criminals don't know he's filming them yet, but once they realize the kid in the house has been watching their every move, that camcorder makes him a target independent of the chip. The film does something clever with the FBI subplot. There's actually a real investigation happening parallel to Alex's personal crisis, federal agents trying to track the stolen chip, following leads that are always one step behind the criminals. We get brief cutaways to Agent Stuckey, played by Christopher Curry, working the case from his office, pursuing legitimate investigative channels that are too slow to help. The film uses these scenes to validate that the threat is real, that this isn't just Alex's imagination. There really are federal agents searching for this technology. The criminals really are dangerous. But the bureaucracy of official investigation can't move fast enough to protect one kid in one suburb. Alex is on his own through institutional failure, not just adult dismissiveness. The criminals finally zero in on Alex's house through process of elimination. They've searched everywhere else. Mrs. Hess is the nexus. She had the bag, she gave something to the neighbor kid, and that's the only logical explanation for why the chip hasn't surfaced. Beaupre sends Alice to scout the Pruitt residence first. She poses as a social worker doing a neighborhood survey, knocking on doors with a clipboard and fake credentials. When Alex's mom answers, Alice is all professional smiles, asking routine questions about household size and community needs. But she's scanning the interior, looking for signs of the toy car, checking sight lines and entry points. Alex is upstairs during this conversation, watching through a crack in his bedroom door. He recognizes Alice from his surveillance footage. Same woman, different outfit, different cover story. His mom doesn't notice the inconsistencies because she's got no reason to be suspicious. A friendly woman with a clipboard asking bland questions, that's just suburban life. But Alex sees through it immediately. After his mom closes the door, he races to the window and watches Alice return to a parked car where Jernigan is waiting. They're working as a team, and his house is now their primary target. This realization accelerates everything. Alex has maybe hours before they come back, and next time they won't knock politely. He needs to be ready. The preparation montage that follows is surprisingly detailed for a kids' movie. Gosnell doesn't just show Alex setting traps in quick cuts, he shows the actual labor involved. Drilling holes for tripwires, calculating angles for swinging paint cans, testing weight distribution on a makeshift icy patio using the garden hose, rigging the doggy door with a mechanism that will trigger when opened. These aren't magical traps that appear fully formed. They're engineering projects that require trial and error. The film respects the intelligence of its audience by making the traps plausible. Everything Alex builds could actually work if you had the materials, the time, and a willingness to destroy your house. He's not creating cartoon physics. He's using leverage, momentum, gravity, and friction. A toy car with fireworks attached becomes a mobile explosive distraction. A strategically placed ironing board becomes a catapult. Flowers spread on stairs creates low visibility hazards. The traps are creative but grounded in actual physical principles, which makes them satisfying to watch get deployed later. There's a moment where Alex tests one of his contraptions, a pulley system designed to swing a heavy toolbox into someone's path, and it works too well, nearly knocking him over. He adjusts the trajectory, recalculates, tries again. This trial and error process is crucial for believability. Kevin McAllister's traps in the original film sometimes felt preordained, like the universe bent physics to ensure they worked perfectly. Alex's traps feel provisional, cobbled together by a smart kid doing his best with limited time and resources. Some might fail, some might work better than expected. That uncertainty makes the eventual confrontation more tense. The film also shows the physical tone on Alex. He's still sick. The chickenpox hasn't magically disappeared because the plot needs him mobile. He's tired, sweating from fever and exertion, taking breaks to catch his breath. Linz plays this convincingly, showing fatigue in his body language. Alex isn't a superhero. He's a kid pushing through illness to protect himself. And that exhaustion will become a factor when the criminals finally arrive. He won't be at full capacity, which means his traps have to do most of the work. While Alex is preparing, the criminals are conducting their final reconnaissance. Beaupre develops a plan. Wait until night when the house is asleep, then break in quietly and search methodically. They are not thugs. They can handle a simple burglary without violence if necessary. Find the chip, leave no trace, disappear before anyone notices. It's a sound plan that would work against normal circumstances. What they don't account for is a paranoid 8-year-old who spent 2 days turning his home into a battlefield. Night falls. Alex's mom tucks him in, checks his temperature, makes sure he's taken his medicine. She has no idea what her son has been doing all day. The house looks normal to her, maybe a bit messier, but Alex is supposed to be resting, not cleaning. She heads to bed herself, exhausted from patient visits and worried about her sick kid. Stan and Molly are in their rooms, absorbed in teenage concerns. The house settles into quiet, and that's when the criminals make their move. The break-in sequence is shot with genuine tension. Gosnell plays it straight initially, no comedy, just 4 professionals bypassing a lock and entering through the back door. They're wearing dark clothes, using flashlights, communicating with hand signals. For a few minutes, this could be a real home invasion thriller. Alice heads upstairs to check bedrooms. Jernigan sweeps the main floor. Unger checks the garage. Beaupre coordinates from the living room. They are splitting up to cover ground faster, which is tactically sound, but also sets them up for individual trap encounters. Alex is awake in his room, listening. He's got his camcorder ready, his escape routes planned, and his trap triggers within reach. When he hears the first footstep on the stairs, Alice's boot hitting the 3rd step from the bottom, he knows it started. The film cuts between his face, tense and focused, and Alice's cautious ascent. She's moving slowly, professionally, checking corners. She has no reason to expect resistance from a sleeping child. That complacency is about to become very expensive. But here's where the film makes an interesting choice. The traps don't trigger immediately. The criminals search for a while first, tossing Alex's room while he hides in his closet, holding his breath. Alice goes through his drawers, his closet, even checks under his bed. She's thorough and surprisingly gentle with his belongings. She's looking for a toy car, not trying to destroy a kid's stuff. This creates an odd tension. These are dangerous people conducting a criminal operation, but they're not monsters. They're trying to minimize damage, avoid confrontation. That makes them more realistic and, weirdly, more sympathetic, which complicates the viewer's emotional response when they start getting hurt. Alice eventually finds the disassembled RC car parts on Alex's desk. She radios down to Bopra, "I've got something." The whole crew converges upstairs, and that's when Alex realizes he's surrounded. 4 adults, 1 kid, no way out except through them. He's in his closet, watching through a crack as they examine the car pieces, searching for the chip. Jernigan is the one who realizes the chip isn't there. "It's been removed," he says, holding up the empty battery compartment. Bopra's face goes cold. Then the kid has it. They start searching more aggressively now, ripping through the room, and Alex knows he's seconds from being discovered. He makes a decision, trigger everything at once, and use the chaos to escape. He's got a master switch, a rigged power strip connected to multiple trap mechanisms downstairs, and he yanks the cord he's threaded under his door to activate it. Suddenly, mechanisms throughout the house spring to life. The sound is overwhelming. Crashes, bangs, electronic whirs. The criminals freeze, confused, and in that moment of hesitation, Alex bolts. He bursts from the closet, slides between Anga's legs, and makes for the stairs. Alice lunges to grab him, but misses. He's small, fast, and he's got adrenaline overriding his fever. The chase begins, and this is where the film transitions fully into slapstick mode. Alex hits the stairs running, and behind him, the criminals are triggering traps he's set for exactly this scenario. A tripwire releases a shelf of books that cascades down, creating obstacles. Marbles spread on the landing cause Alice to slip and crash into Jernigan. Unger steps on a toy car that sends him sliding backward into a wall. Alex makes it to the first floor and heads for the back door, his planned escape route. But Beaupre has circled around and cuts him off. They face each other across the kitchen, a grown man with military training and an 8-year-old clutching a computer chip. Beaupre tries the calm approach. "Alex, is it? Let's be reasonable. Give us the chip and we'll leave. No one gets hurt." His voice is measured, almost kind, which makes him more frightening than if he were yelling. This is a man negotiating, not threatening, which implies confidence that he'll get what he wants one way or another. Alex responds by hitting a switch that activates the kitchen taps. The sink sprayer, rigged to trigger when the cold tap turns, blasts Beaupre in the face with high-pressure water. A swinging cabinet door, weighted and spring-loaded, clocks him in the head. Alex uses the distraction to run again, this time toward the garage. He knows every inch of this house. They don't. That home field advantage is his only edge. The garage sequence is pure escalating chaos. Alex has turned it into an obstacle course, hanging tools, tripwires, a precariously stacked pile of paint cans near the door. Jernigan and Unger chase him in, and immediately everything goes wrong for them. Jernigan trips a wire that releases a suspended rake, which shrinks down and hits him, rake teeth first, in the face. It's a classic slapstick gag, but it's shot with real impact. Von Dolen sells the pain convincingly. Unger, following behind, steps on a board that catapults a hammer into his groin. Again, cartoon physics applied with just enough realism to make you wince. Alex escapes through the garage's side door and circles back into the house through the front. He's trying to reach the phone in his parents' room. His mom somehow slept through the initial chaos. Or maybe she's out on an emergency patient call. The film is deliberately vague here to keep her absent without straining belief. But Alice intercepts him in the hallway. She's faster than the others, more athletic, and she's furious now. The professional composure is gone. She grabs for Alex, and he ducks, sliding through her legs again, a move that's becoming his signature escape. But this time she anticipates it and catches his shirt. For a moment, they are locked in an actual physical struggle, and the film doesn't shy away from how dangerous this is. Alice is an adult who could easily overpower a child. Alex's only advantages are desperation and his intimate knowledge of the trap layout. He reaches for a cord dangling from the ceiling part of a trap he set in the hallway and pulls hard. A bucket of soapy water dumps onto Alice's head, blinding her momentarily. Her grip loosens, and Alex breaks free. The house has become a war zone, and the film fully embraces it now. What started as a quiet break-in has devolved into complete pandemonium. The criminals are split up, each dealing with their own trap-induced disasters, and Alex is playing a desperate game of keep away with the chip still clutched in his hand. Gosnell shoots this section with kinetic energy. The camera moves constantly, tracking Alex as he races through rooms, cutting to the criminals, escalating frustration, maintaining spatial geography, so we always know where everyone is. Beaupre, soaked and nursing a head wound from the kitchen assault, tries to regain control of the situation. He is barking orders through a walkie-talkie. Contain the exits. Don't let him outside. But his team is scattered and increasingly ineffective. The professional military coordination from earlier has collapsed. They are reacting instead of strategizing, which is exactly where Alex needs them. A reactive enemy makes mistakes. A panicked enemy triggers traps without thinking. Alex makes it to the second floor bathroom and locks himself in. It's a temporary sanctuary, giving him maybe 30 seconds to catch his breath and think. He's shaking from fever, from adrenaline, from the sheer terror of having four adults hunting him through his own house. Linz plays this moment with genuine fear in his eyes. There's no quippy one-liner, no moment of cocky confidence. He's a scared kid who's in way over his head, and the only thing keeping him moving is survival instinct. The bathroom door starts rattling. Unger is outside, putting his shoulder into it. The lock won't hold long. Alex looks around frantically for options. The window is too high and leads to a dangerous drop onto concrete. The only exit is through the door, which means through Unger. He spots the bathroom cabinet, his dad's shaving supplies, his mom's hairspray, cleaning products under the sink. An idea forms. He grabs the hairspray and a lighter his dad keeps for emergencies, positions himself and waits. When the door finally splinters open, Unger comes charging through, and Alex hits him with a makeshift flamethrower. It's just hairspray and a flame, the kind of stupid dangerous thing kids are warned never to do, but it works. The burst of fire catches Unger across the face and chest. He is not seriously burned. This is still a family movie, but he is shocked and singed, stumbling backward into the hallway, where he trips over a toy truck. Alex left strategically placed and tumbles down the stairs in a spectacular rolling fall that ends with him crashed into the front door. David Thornton commits fully to the physical comedy here, and is genuinely impressive stunt work disguised as slapstick. The fall is carefully choreographed but looks chaotic and painful. When Unger finally stops moving at the bottom of the stairs, tangled in winter coats that fell from the closet, he's done. Not unconscious, but definitely out of the fight for now. 1 down, 3 to go. Alex doesn't celebrate. He's running again, this time to his parents' room where the main phone line is. He needs to call for help, police, FBI, anyone who'll listen now that there's actual violence happening. But when he picks up the receiver, the line is dead. Jernigan, the tech expert, has cut the phone lines from outside. Of course he has. These are professionals, and even in their current compromised state, they are thinking tactically. No communications means no reinforcements, means Alex is truly isolated. The film uses this moment to show Alex's despair. He's holding a dead phone, and the weight of his situation crashes down. He can't call out. His family isn't home or isn't waking up. The film maintains deliberate ambiguity about where exactly his mom is, preserving the home alone if he dembremis, without being too specific. The criminals are between him and any exit. He's sick, exhausted, and running out of traps. The chip in his pocket feels impossibly heavy. Maybe he should just give it to them. Would they really leave him alone if he did? But then he hears Mrs. Hess scream from next door. The sound carries through the winter air, through his cracked window. The criminals have split their focus. Some are at his house, but Bopley has sent Alice next door to search Mrs. Hess's place again, more aggressively this time. They're expanding the search perimeter, which means Mrs. Hess is in danger too. That realization galvanizes Alex. This isn't just about him anymore. His neighbor, who showed him kindness, who's alone and elderly and scared, needs help. He can't give up. Alex makes a decision that the film treats with appropriate weight. He's going on offense. Instead of just defending and evading, he's going to systematically take down each criminal and create enough chaos to alert the whole neighborhood. No more hiding. He still has traps to spring, and if he's going down, he's taking them with him. It's a shift in mindset that transforms the film's energy. Alex goes from hunted to hunter. He grabs the camcorder, still recording, still documenting everything, and heads back downstairs. Jernigan is in the living room, searching through drawers. He doesn't see Alex approach from behind. Alex has set up a trap near the Christmas tree. Yes, there's still a Christmas tree up in mid-January, a detail that feels authentically suburban. Lights are strung everywhere, extension cords running across the floor. Alex grabs one cord and yanks it sharply. The tree rocks, ornaments fall, and Jernigan turns toward the noise, which puts him directly in the path of a swinging paint. Alex has released from the stairs. The paint catches Jernigan square in the face with an audible thunk. is the film's most direct homage to the original Home Alone, and Gosnell shoots it with the same careful framing. We see the can swing into frame, see the impact, see Jernigan's stunned reaction before he collapses. Von Dolen's physical commitment sells it. He goes down hard, genuinely knocked out, two down. That leaves Bopre and Alice, and they're the most dangerous. Bopre has military training. Alice has already proven she's fast and tough. Alex can't fight them directly. He needs to separate them, isolate them, and use the house's geography against them. He races to the basement stairs, one of the few areas he hasn't fully booby-trapped yet, which was strategic. He's been saving the basement for last because it's the most contained environment. Once someone goes down there, there's only one way out. He makes noise deliberately, banging on pipes, knocking over boxes. The sound draws Bopra, who follows cautiously. The basement is dark, and Alex has removed most of the light bulbs. Bopra uses a flashlight, scanning the space. "Alex, this is foolish," he calls out. "You're making this worse for yourself. We just want the chip. Give it to us." And this ends. His voice echoes in the concrete space, calm and reasonable and absolutely chilling because of that calm. Alex doesn't respond verbally. Instead, he activates the basement traps. He's rigged the space like a gauntlet. Tripwires, falling objects, a section of floor covered in ultra-slippery detergent. Bopra steps carefully, but it's not enough. A wire catches his ankle, triggering a mechanism that releases a cascade of stored sporting equipment. Baseballs, a bowling ball, hockey pucks that rain down from shelves. Bopre dodges most of it, his training showing, but the floor is slick now, and when he tries to advance, he goes down. The bowling ball, specifically, does the most damage. It rolls across the angled basement floor and catches Bopre's knee with a crack that sounds painful even through the comedic framing. Krupa sells the injury. Bopre's composure finally breaks, and he's yelling in pain and frustration. He's still conscious but badly hurt, clutching his knee. Alex emerges from behind the furnace, where he was hiding, and runs for the stairs, slamming the basement door behind him and jamming it shut with a broom handle through the latch. 3 down. Only Alice remains, and she's the most relentless. She's been searching the house systematically, and by now, she's figured out Alex's patterns. She's avoided most traps by moving slowly, testing each step. When she and Alex finally face off in the kitchen again, there's a moment of mutual recognition. She knows he's smart, he knows she's capable. The fight that follows is less about traps and more about a physical chase through the remaining unclapped spaces. Alice lunges across the kitchen table and Alex barely dodges. He throws whatever he can grab, fruit from the bowl, utensils, a roll of paper towels. None of it stops her. She's got longer reach, better speed, and she's cornering him near the refrigerator. But Alex has one more trick here. The freezer is rigged. When she grabs him by the shoulder, he pulls the freezer door open hard, and a rigged bucket of ice water, frozen solid overnight, falls from the top shelf. It catches Alice across the shoulders and head, the impact stunning her long enough for Alex to slip away again. He makes for the front door finally, the exit. If he can get outside, he can scream for neighbors, run to another house, get actual help. But Alice recovers faster than expected and tackles him in the foyer. They crash to the floor, and the chip flies from Alex's pocket, skittering across the hardwood. For a moment, both of them are frozen, watching it slide. Then they scramble for it simultaneously. Alex is closer, but Alice is faster. Her hand closes around the chip just as Alex grabs a nearby umbrella from the stand and jams it between her legs, tripping her. The chip pops loose again, and this time Alex snatches it and runs, not for the door but back upstairs. He's got one final trap up there, something he's been saving, and if he can just get Alice to follow him to the right spot, she does. She's furious now, all professionalism completely gone, chasing him with single-minded intensity. They're both exhausted. Alex is flagging, his fever making him dizzy. Alice has taken multiple hits and is battered and bruised. When they reach the upstairs hallway, Alex makes his last stand. He's positioned a makeshift catapult at the end of the hall, an ironing board on a fulcrum, weighted on one end. He runs past it, spins, and stomps on the weighted end. The other end launches upward with force, catching Alice in the chin as she rounds the corner at full speed. The impact lifts her off her feet, a moment of pure cartoon physics that somehow works within the film's established reality. And she crashes backward down the hallway, colliding with the linen closet door, and finally going down. Kihlstedt takes the stunt with full commitment, and when Alice slumps against the wall, semi-conscious, you believe she's done. 4 down, all down, all down, all down. Alex stands in the hallway shaking, barely able to stand himself. The house is destroyed, broken furniture, water damage, holes in walls, debris everywhere. It looks like a tornado went through. But he's alive and he's still got the chip. The camera holds on his face and Linz lets us see the toll, tears mixing with sweat, total exhaustion, the crash after adrenaline. He's not triumphant, he's traumatized. He's an 8-year-old who just had to fight for his life against grown adults, and the film doesn't gloss over the emotional weight of that. Sirens in the distance. Someone finally called the police. Maybe a neighbor heard the commotion. Maybe Mrs. Hess got to a phone. Maybe Alex's mom came home and saw the disaster. The specifics don't matter. Help is coming. Alex collapses to sit on the top stair, still clutching the chip, and waits. The siege is over. The aftermath unfolds with surprising restraint. The police arrive in 4 squad cars, an ambulance, even FBI agents who've been tracking the chip theft and finally connected the dots to this suburban address. The 4 criminals are arrested on site, battered and humiliated but alive. Bopre is loaded into an ambulance with his shattered knee. Alice, Janigan and Ungar are cuffed and put in separate squad cars, still looking dazed from their ordeal. The juxtaposition is almost surreal. Professional international spies defeated by a 3rd grader with a toolbox and too much time on his hands. Agent Stuckey takes custody of the chip, verifying its authenticity with equipment he's brought. He turns to Alex with a mixture of disbelief and respect. You know what you had here? He asks. Alex shrugs, still sitting on the stairs wrapped in a blanket someone gave him. Something important, he says quietly. Stuckey almost laughs. That's an understatement, kid. This chip is worth $10 million and contains classified missile defense technology. You just prevented a major security breach. The weight of that statement hangs in the air. Alex didn't know he was protecting national security. He was just trying not to die. Mrs. Hess emerges from next door, shaken but unhurt. She rushes to Alex and their reunion is genuinely touching. Celis and Linz play the scene with real warmth. She's apologizing for not believing him sooner and he's apologizing for getting her involved. It's a quiet moment amidst the chaos of police activity and the film lets it breathe. These 2 neighbors, both overlooked and underestimated by everyone around them, protected each other when it mattered. That bond feels earned. Alex's family finally shows up, his mom arriving from wherever she was, his dad driving back from Cleveland after frantic phone calls, his siblings stunned into silence by the destruction. His mom holds him, checking him over for injuries beyond the chickenpox, trying to process that her 8-year-old fought off armed criminals while she was absent. The guilt on her face is palpable, and the film doesn't let her off easy. I should have listened, she says, and Alex doesn't contradict her. He should have been believed. But he also understands she had no framework for believing something this insane was happening. The film could end here, threat resolved, family reunited, lessons learned. But Gosnell and Hughes add a coda that's pure wish fulfillment. A few days later, after the media storm has died down and Alex is finally recovering properly from chickenpox, Agent Stuckey returns with a representative from the Department of Defense. They present Alex with a commendation for his actions, officially recognizing his role in recovering classified technology and apprehending international criminals. It's ceremonial, but the film treats it seriously. Alex gets validation from authority figures, something the entire movie has denied him until this moment. More satisfying is what happens to the criminals. The film shows them in court, being sentenced to lengthy prison terms. But before that, there's a scene of them in holding cells, comparing injuries and looking absolutely miserable. Bopre has a cast on his leg. Alice has bandages on her head and a spectacular black eye. Jernigan's face is swollen from the pain can impact. Unger is moving like everything hurts. They're professionals who got demolished by a child, and that humiliation is part of their punishment. The film lingers on their defeated expressions just long enough to drive the point home. Underestimating people, especially kids, is a fatal mistake. The neighborhood reaction adds another layer of resolution. Suddenly, Alex is famous on his street. The kid who took down international spies becomes a local legend. Neighbors who barely noticed him before are bringing casseroles and asking for autographs. Kids his age look at him with awe. It's classic. Hughes' wish fulfillment, the overlooked underdog becomes the hero, respected by everyone who dismissed him. The film knows this is fantasy and it leans into that fantasy without apology. Sometimes the good guy winning completely is exactly what the story needs. There's a final scene at school after Alex returns from his chickenpox quarantine. The principal calls him to the office, and for a moment, Alex thinks he's in trouble, maybe for all the property damage at his house. But instead, the principal presents him with an award from the school board recognizing his bravery. His classmates give him a standing ovation. The teacher who sent him home sick weeks ago looks embarrassed and proud simultaneously. It's pure catharsis, the social validation that every kid who's been dismissed or overlooked dreams about. But the film's actual final moment is quieter. Alex is back in his room, which has been repaired and cleaned. He's tinkering with a new RC car, a gift from Mrs. Hess to replace the one that got destroyed in all the chaos. His mom watches from the doorway and they share a look that communicates everything. She sees him differently now with more respect and trust. He's proven he's capable of more than anyone gave him credit for. That mutual recognition, that shift in their relationship, is the real resolution the film has been building toward. The siege sequences that form Act Three's heart are where Home Alone 3 lives or dies as a film, and they are executed with technical precision that deserves deeper examination. Gosnell understood from his editing background that clap sequences work best with clear spatial geography and rhythmic pacing. Each clap follows a pattern: setup, trigger, reaction, consequence. But within that pattern, he varies the timing and intensity to prevent monotony. Some claps are quick hits, a single gag in and out. Others are elaborate sequences where one trap leads to another in chain reaction fashion. The paint can trap, for instance, is a single beat gag, swing, impact, fall. It's over in seconds but shot with perfect clarity. We see Alex release the mechanism, see the can swing through empty space, see Jerrigan turn into its path, see the impact and the aftermath. 5 cuts, maybe 3 seconds of screen time, but every element is visible and comprehensible. Compare that to the basement sequence, which is a sustained cascade of hazards. That sequence takes nearly 2 minutes of screen time with multiple stages: the tripwire, the falling equipment, the slippery floor, the bowling ball finale. Is designed to feel overwhelming for Bobra and exhausting for the audience, but in a satisfying way. What makes these traps work beyond their technical execution is the sound design. Every impact has weight. The paint can hitting Jernigan has a metallic clang followed by a meaty thunka. The bowling ball has that distinctive rumbling roll before the crack of impact. The ice bucket has a wet espile combined with the thud of frozen water. These sounds sell the physical comedy. They make cartoon violence feel viscerally real without actually depicting serious injury. It's a delicate balance that the film maintains remarkably well. We wince at the impacts but never genuinely fear for anyone's safety. The film also uses the traps to reveal character. Bopre, even when being assaulted by sporting equipment, tries to maintain tactical thinking. He is looking for cover, planning his next move. Alice gets increasingly aggressive and reckless, abandoning caution for speed. Jernigan panics easily, making him vulnerable to anything unexpected. Anga just bulls forward with brute force, which makes him susceptible to misdirection. Alex exploits these personality differences instinctively. He doesn't need to know these people. He just needs to observe how they move and react, then design traps that target their specific behaviors. There's a self-awareness to how the film handles the violence. This is a PG-rated family movie about a child inflicting serious harm on adults, which creates an inherent tonal challenge. The solution is exaggeration. Push the reactions just far enough into cartoonish territory that we read them as slapstick rather than realistic violence. When Anga tumbles down the stairs, he bounces more than a real body would. When Alice gets hit by the catapult, she flies backward with momentum that defies physics. These subtle departures from realism signal to the audience that we are in heightened reality, where people can take massive punishment and walk away with bruises rather than broken bones. The siege also functions as a test of resourcefulness versus training. The criminals have military and espionage backgrounds. They should be able to handle home invasion scenarios easily, but they're trained for predictable environments, security systems, locks, maybe a guard or two. They are not trained for a constantly shifting battlefield where the environment itself is hostile and the opponent knows every inch of terrain. Alex's advantage isn't physical strength or tactical training, it's intimate knowledge of space and unlimited creativity within that space. He knows which floorboards creak, where the light switches are in the dark, how much weight each shelf can hold before collapsing. That knowledge becomes weaponized. The destruction of the house is another key element. By the end of Act 3, the Pruitt home is devastated. Walls have holes, floors are covered in various liquids and debris, furniture is smashed, appliances are destroyed. The film doesn't shy away from showing this damage. In fact, it lingers on it. There's a consequence to Alex's defense. His family's home has been turned into a disaster zone. That destruction matters because it grounds the comedy in reality. Yes, Alex won. Yes, he's safe. But there's a significant cost beyond his own trauma. The house, that's supposed to be his sanctuary, has become a battlefield, and restoring it will take time and money his family may struggle to afford. Interestingly, the film doesn't dwell on these practical concerns. This isn't a gritty, realistic drama, but the visual evidence is there, creating a subtext that older viewers can pick up on, even if younger audiences just enjoy the chaos. It adds a layer of complexity to what could have been purely celebratory. Alex had to destroy his home to save himself. That's not entirely victorious, it's complicated and messy and real in ways that undercut the fantasy slightly. The performance dynamics during the siege are crucial. Linz has to carry long sequences alone, reacting to things that aren't there yet, because the trap effects will be added or the other actors aren't in frame. His ability to maintain genuine emotion, fear, determination, exhaustion through repetitive takes of physical action keeps the sequences grounded. When he's running through the house, he actually looks tired and scared, not like he's having fun making a movie. That commitment sells the stakes. The adult actors, meanwhile, have to balance dignity with humiliation. They are playing competent professionals brought low by increasingly ridiculous circumstances, and that's a hard line to walk. Krupa maintains Beaupré's authority even as he is being assaulted by traps. The character never becomes purely comic relief. Kihlstedt gives Alice real menace even in defeat. Von Dolen and Thornton lean more into the comedy with Janigan and Unger, allowing themselves to be fully humiliated, but they never wink at the camera. Everyone commits to the reality of the situation within the heightened context, and that ensemble commitment makes the absurdity work. The visual language of Home Alone 3 reveals itself most clearly when you stop watching the action and start watching how the action is shot. Gosnell, coming from editorial, thinks in frames and cuts. How much information each shot needs to convey, how long to hold before moving on, where to position the camera so geography stays clear. This isn't flashy cinematography. There are no dramatic crane shots or artsy angles. Instead, it's functional visual storytelling designed to support comedy and maintain spatial clarity across chaotic sequences. That workmanlike approach is actually the smartest choice for this material. Julio Macart handles cinematography duties and his resume is telling. He'd shot both previous Home Alone films plus several other Hughes productions. He knows this territory intimately, understands the specific visual drama the franchise requires. Slapstick comedy demands precision in framing. You need to see the setup, the trigger, and the payoff in clear visual progression. Miss any element and the gag dies. Macart shoots with that clarity as priority 1. Wide shots establish space and trap placement. Medium shots show character reactions. Close-ups punctuate impacts. It's classical Hollywood coverage applied to elaborate physical comedy. The color palette is deliberately suburban mundane. The Pruitt house isn't stylized, it's beige walls, standard carpeting, furniture that looks purchased from mid-range department stores. The production design by Henry Bumstead, a legendary designer with decades of experience, creates a space that feels lived in rather than movie set pristine. There are normal household clutter elements, kids' toys on floors, coats piled on chairs, mail stacked on counters. This ordinariness serves a purpose. The more normal the environment looks initially, the more shocking its transformation into a battlefield becomes. We are watching a real home get destroyed, not a Hollywood construct. Lighting throughout most of the film is naturalistic, leaning on practical sources. During daytime scenes, windows provide most illumination, that soft, diffuse Chicago winter light that's grey and even. At night, household lamps and overhead fixtures do the work. Macart doesn't artificially pump light into spaces to make them look glamorous. If a room would be dim at night, he lets it be dim. This creates genuine shadows that Alex can hide in, genuine darkness that makes the criminal's flashlights necessary. The lighting isn't just aesthetic, it's functional to the story. The camera work during surveillance sequences adopts Alex's perspective through deliberate framing choices. When he is watching through binoculars, Makat shoots from behind Alex over his shoulder, showing us the binocular view as circular vignettes. When he is filming with the camcorder, we get actual camcorder footage, lower resolution, slight jitter from handheld operation, the timestamp visible in the corner. These aren't just cute stylistic touches, they're putting us inside Alex's experience, making his observation process tactile and specific. The production design of trap construction deserves attention. Everything Alex uses comes from plausible household sources, which means Bumstead and his team had to stock the Pruitt house with exactly the right kinds of everyday items that could be weaponized. The garage needed to have tools, but not professional workshop equipment, consumer grade stuff a typical suburban dad might own. The basement needed sporting goods, but in realistic quantities and conditions. Even small details matter. The paint cans are half empty and dusty, suggesting they are left over from years ago home improvement projects. This specificity makes the world feel real. The house's geography gets established through careful blocking and camera placement in the first act. Gosnell takes time to show us the layout in mundane contexts before the chaos begins. We see Alex walk from his bedroom down the stairs to the kitchen in a single tracking shot. We watch his mom move from the living room through the dining area to the front door. These innocuous moments are actually mapping the space for us, building a mental blueprint that pays off when the siege begins and we need to understand where everyone is relative to each other. The decision to shoot in an actual house rather than on sound stages impacts everything. Real architecture has fixed dimensions and load-bearing walls you can't just remove for better camera angles. Makat has to work within the constraints of existing spaces, which means creative camera placement and sometimes shooting from awkward positions to get coverage. But that constraint creates authenticity. The house feels like a real place because it is one. When characters run through doorways, those doorways are actual residential scale, not Hollywood widened versions. When they climb stairs, those stairs have real dimensions, with real spatial limitations. The visual comedy construction follows specific patterns that Gosnell repeats with variations. The standard setup: show the trap being built or primed, show the victim approaching unaware, show the trigger moment, show the impact, show the reaction. But within this structure, timing gets varied dramatically. Some traps have long build-ups with extended anticipation. We watch Alice carefully ascending stairs, checking each step, while we know something's coming but not exactly when. Others have instant triggers. Beaupre opens a cabinet and WHAM. Something happens immediately. This rhythm variation prevents predictability. Reaction shots are critical to selling physical comedy, and Gosnell and Makat know this. After every major trap impact, there's a beat where the camera holds on the victim's face, letting us see the processing shock, pain, confusion, rage. These reactions are often funnier than the traps themselves. Kihlstedt's face after the ice bucket drops, going through the stages of what just happened to "I'm going to murder this child" is a perfect example. The trap is the setup, the reaction is the punchline. The use of POV shots throughout the siege sequences puts us alternately in Alex's perspective and the criminal's perspective, creating empathy on both sides. When Alex is being chased, we get his POV running through narrow spaces, seeing adults reaching hands at the edges of flame, genuinely frightening. When the criminals are navigating trapped areas, we get their POV seeing seemingly normal rooms that could be hiding dangers anywhere, genuinely tense. This dual perspective approach makes the conflict feel balanced rather than one-sided. Production design extends to the criminal's temporary base, the rented house they are operating from. Bumstead creates a space that looks like a suburban rental that's been converted into an operations center. Maps on walls, surveillance equipment on tables, but also the house's original furnishings pushed to the sides. It's a collision of domestic space and professional operation, which visually reinforces the film's central concept: suburban normalcy invaded by international intrigue. The RC car deserves specific mention as a production design element. It's generic enough to be believable as a toy, but detailed enough to be interesting. The fact that it gets disassembled on camera means the prop department had to create a functioning toy that could also be taken apart to reveal a plausible hiding place for a microchip. Small details like this don't get noticed consciously by most viewers, but they contribute to overall believability. If the car looked fake or the disassembly process looked staged, it would break the reality the film is constructing. Weather and seasonal design choices affect the visual palette significantly. This is Chicago in January, which means overcast skies, snow on the ground, bare trees, short daylight hours. That grey, cold atmosphere permeates the exterior shots and affects the mood even in interior scenes. The light coming through windows is dim and colorless. When characters go outside, breath condenses in cold air. These environmental details create a specific sense of place and time. This isn't generic suburban anywhere, it's specifically winter in the Midwest. The destruction of the house during trap sequences is choreographed with impressive attention to escalation. Early traps cause minimal damage. A spilled bucket, marbles on the floor, things that could be cleaned up easily. As the siege intensifies, the damage increases proportionally. Furniture breaks, walls get holes punched in them, water soaks through floors. By the climax, entire rooms are destroyed. This visual progression mirrors the narrative escalation, stakes rising, chaos increasing, the point of no return being crossed. The house's physical state at any moment tells you where we are in the story's arc. Camera angles during trap sequences often adopt low positions, shooting from floor level or slightly below. This serves dual purposes. It makes the adults look larger and more threatening from Alex's perspective, and it keeps the mechanics of traps visible at ground level where many of them operate. A low angle shows tripwires clearly, shows feet about to step on triggers, shows objects sliding across floors. These aren't dramatic angles chosen for aesthetic reasons. They are practical angles chosen to convey maximum information about physical comedy mechanics. The use of real practical effects rather than CGI, which was becoming more common in 1997 but still expensive and time consuming for comedies, grounds everything in physical reality. When Alice gets hit with ice water, that's real water and real ice. When Unger gets slimed with various substances, those are real practical goop effects. When objects fly through the air and hit people, those are real objects on wires or launched by spring mechanisms. Hitting real actors, you're more likely they're stunt doubles in wide shots. The tangibility of practical effects makes the comedy land harder than digital effects could have. Editing rhythm during action sequences is faster than during setup sequences, which is standard but executed with precision here. During Alex's preparation montages, cuts come every few seconds, showing different traps being constructed in quick succession. During surveillance scenes, cuts are slower, letting us watch with Alex as he observes suspicious behavior. During siege sequences, cuts accelerate dramatically, sometimes multiple cuts per second during peak chaos moments, creating visual intensity that mirrors the character's panic. The film uses doorways and hallway framing extensively during chase sequences, creating natural frames within frames that focus attention. When Alice is chasing Alex down a hallway, the camera is often positioned to show the hallway's length with doorways on either side, creating a tunnel effect that emphasizes the pursuit's linearity. When characters are in rooms, doorways become danger zones. Anyone could appear there at any moment. This architectural framing creates innate tension without requiring artificial dramatic cinematography. Color temperature shifts subtly between day and night scenes in ways that support mood. Daytime interiors have cooler, bluer light from windows that overcast Chicago winter sky filtering in. Nighttime interiors have warmer, yellower light from tungsten household bulbs. This natural color temperature variation helps orient viewers temporally without needing obvious timestamps or dialogue establishing time. You feel whether it's day or night based on the light quality. The production design of the criminals' disguises and cover identities shows attention to detail. When they are posing as service workers, their costumes are accurate to what those professions actually wear. Proper utility company uniforms, actual plumber tools, legitimate looking ID badges on lanyards. These details make the deception visually believable. Alex's suspicion has to override seemingly legitimate visual markers, which requires him, Landias, to look deeper than surface appearances. Makat's camera doesn't editorialize during morally ambiguous moments. When Alex is inflicting serious pain on the criminals, the framing doesn't pull back in judgment or push in to celebrate. It just shows what's happening with neutral clarity. This restraint is crucial for maintaining the tone. If the camera seemed to be judging Alex's violence as wrong, the fantasy would collapse. If it celebrated too gleefully, the film would become mean-spirited. The neutral presentation lets viewers process the violence through the comedic frame without forcing a moral interpretation. The visual representation of Alex's illness, the chickenpox, is handled with surprising restraint. The makeup department gives Linz visible red spots but doesn't overdo it to the point of distraction. He looks sick but not grotesque, feverish but not incapacitated. This visual balance keeps the chickenpox present as a plot element without overwhelming scenes. We are reminded of his illness through visual cues without those cues becoming the focus of attention. Performance in a Home Alone film requires a specific skill set that not all child actors possess. You need naturalism combined with comic timing, the ability to sell genuine fear while also landing slapstick beats, and the stamina to carry massive amounts of screen time, often acting alone or against adults who aren't in the scene with you. Alex D. Linz threads this needle with more success than the film probably deserved. At 8 years old during production, he brings a grounded quality that distinguishes Alex Pruitt from Kevin McAllister in crucial ways. Linz's performance style is reactive rather than proactive, where Culkin played Kevin as theatrical and performative, constantly aware of himself as the center of attention, delivering lines with vaudeville timing. Linz plays Alex as observational and internalized. Watch his face during surveillance scenes. He's not mugging for the camera or telegraphing his thoughts with exaggerated expressions. He's watching, thinking, processing. His face moves subtly, a slight narrowing of eyes when something doesn't add up, a small tightening of his jaw when he realizes he's in danger. These micro expressions create a character who feels like an actual smart kid rather than a Hollywood version of one. The physicality Linz brings to the role is impressive for his age. He's running through the house for extended takes, sliding under furniture, climbing through tight spaces, and doing it while maintaining character choices. When Alex is exhausted, Linz doesn't just say he's tired, his whole body shows it. His movements get slower, less coordinated. He's breathing hard, sweating visibly. After the adrenaline clash, when the criminals are all down, he's not bouncing around celebrating. He's collapsed on the stairs, barely able to keep his eyes open. That commitment to showing the physical toll grounds the fantasy in bodily reality. The fear Linz portrays feels genuine in a way that's uncommon for kid actors in family films. When Alice grabs him in the hallway, his panic isn't cute or sanitized. It's actual terror. His voice cracks, his eyes go wide, his body stiffens. He's a small child being physically overpowered by a grown woman, and Linz doesn't protect the audience from how frightening that is. Directors working with child actors often pull back from really pushing them into vulnerable emotional states, but Gosnell and Linz commit to showing real fear, which raises the stakes considerably. The moments when Alex is alone, which is most of the film's runtime, showcase Linz's ability to hold the screen without support. He is talking to himself occasionally, narrating his actions quietly, but mostly he is working silently. We watch him build traps, watch him hide, watch him think. Those scenes would be death if the actor couldn't convey thought process through behavior, but Linz manages it. You can track his problem solving by watching his face and body language. He'll look at a space, look at materials available. You can see the idea forming, see him testing it mentally before he begins construction. The comedic timing required for the trap sequences is significant, and Linz handles it well considering his age and experience level. Comedy is all about rhythm, when to move, when to pause, how long to hold a reaction. Too fast and the joke gets lost. Too slow and momentum dies. Linz hits his marks physically and temporally with remarkable consistency. When he's triggering traps, he's hitting specific choreography at specific moments to match the mechanical timing of rigged effects. When he's reacting to near misses, he's holding beats long enough for tension before releasing into action. This is technical acting that many adults struggle with. The adult actors have their own performance challenges. They are playing serious professionals who get subjected to cartoon violence, which requires balancing dignity with absurdity. Olek Krupa as Bopre maintains authority even in defeat, which is the hardest assignment. He is the leader, the most competent criminal, and he needs to remain threatening even as he is getting hit with bowling balls and paint cans. Krupa plays Biopre with cold precision, minimal emotion, calculated decisions, professional focus. Even when he's in pain, he doesn't fully lose composure. That restraint makes him more frightening than if he were constantly angry or panicking. Rya Kihlstedt brings athletic physicality to Alice that distinguishes her from the other criminals. She is the most mobile, the most aggressive, and Kihlstedt performs much of her own stunt work in medium shots where you can see her face. The chase sequences show genuine speed and agility. When Alice wars over furniture or slides under obstacles, it's Kihlstedt doing it, not a stunt double in a wig. That physicality makes Alice feel like a genuine threat. She's capable of catching Alex if she gets lucky or he makes a mistake. Kihlstedt also makes interesting choices with Alice's emotional arc. Early in the film, Alice is all business professional, controlled, focused. As the siege progresses and the traps accumulate, Kihlstedt lets Alice's frustration and rage surface incrementally. By the final confrontation, Alice has completely abandoned professionalism for pure vengeance. She wants to hurt this kid, not just recover the chip. That progression from cool operator to unhinged pursuer happens in visible stages, communicated through increasingly uncontrolled body language and facial expressions. It's a clear character journey compressed into maybe 30 minutes of screen time. Lenny Von Dolen's Jernigan is the most overtly comedic villain, and Von Dolen leans into that assignment. Jernigan is nervous, easily startled, and prone to panicking under pressure. Von Dolen plays him with twitchy energy, lots of quick head movements, fidgeting with equipment, verbal stammering. He is the tech expert who's great with computers but terrible under physical stress. Every trap that hits Jernigan gets a huge reaction because Von Dolen commits fully to the physical comedy. The pain can impact sends him sprawling with arms and legs flailing. The rake hit makes him spin in a full circle before collapsing. These aren't dignified reactions. They are broad slapstick performance that Von Dolen executes with perfect timing. David Thornton's Unger is pure muscle, and Thornton plays him with lumbering physicality that makes him seem dangerous and dopey simultaneously. Unger doesn't think much. He follows orders and applies force. Thornton moves with deliberate heaviness, taking up space, making Unger feel physically imposing. When he's chasing Alex, he's not fast, but he's relentless, crashing through obstacles rather than going around them. The performance is almost cartoonish in its simplicity, but that simplicity works. Unger is a blunt instrument, and Thornton plays him as exactly that. The chemistry among the four criminals matters for selling them as a unit. They have shorthand communication, inside jokes, established patterns of interaction that suggest history together. Bopra gives orders with minimal words. The others understand and execute. Alice and Jernigan bicker like colleagues who work together too long. Unger defers to everyone because he knows he's the least intelligent. These dynamics are established through small performance choices. How they look at each other, their physical positioning relative to each other, tone of voice when addressing different team members. Good ensemble acting creates these relational details that make groups feel cohesive. Haviland Morris as Alex's mom Karen has limited screen time but makes specific choices with what she's given. Karen is distracted, overworked, stretched thin between job and family. Morris plays her with frazzled energy, always moving, always multitasking, never fully present in any moment. That scattered quality explains why she doesn't notice what Alex is trying to tell her. She's not a bad parent, she's an overwhelmed one. Morris gives her warmth in small moments. The way she checks Alex's fever, the gentleness in her voice when tucking him in, but always undercut by the visible exhaustion of someone barely holding everything together. The older siblings, Stan and Molly, are intentionally underwritten, but the actors playing them make strong choices within those limitations. Kevin Kilner as a dad gets even less to work with. He's mostly absent, exists for phone conversations. Scarlett Johansson, in one of her earliest roles as Molly, is barely present enough to evaluate, but even at age 13, she shows a naturalism that would define her later career. Her line deliveries are casual and believable rather than performed, which is all the role requires. Marianne Seldes brings gravitas to Mrs. Hess that elevates what could have been a stock sweet old lady role. Seldes was a legendary stage actress with decades of experience, and she brings that training to even the smallest moments. The way she thanks Alex for shoveling her driveway isn't generic pleasantness. There's specific loneliness underneath, gratitude that someone noticed her, relief at human connection. When she's frightened during the break-in, Seldes plays genuine terror, not theatrical fear. She treats the material seriously, which makes her scenes feel weightier than they might otherwise. The interactions between Linz and Seldes have real chemistry. They play their scenes together with mutual respect and listening. They are actually responding to each other rather than just delivering lines in sequence. The age gap creates a natural dynamic of child seeking wisdom and elder offering protection. Their partnership feels earned because both actors commit to the relationship being real within the film's reality. Child actor direction is always tricky, and Gosnell handles it by keeping things simple and physical. There's very little abstract or emotional direction you can give. An 8-year-old, you need concrete, actionable instructions. Run faster, look scared, hide here. Linz responds well to this approach, delivering naturalism through specific physical actions rather than trying to access complex emotions. When he needs to look determined, he sets his jaw and focuses his eyes. When he needs to look exhausted, he slows his movements and lets his shoulders slump. These are physical choices a child can execute reliably take after take. The film requires Linz to spend considerable time performing solo, which is the hardest assignment for any actor but especially children. When adults aren't present, there's no one to act opposite, no energy to feed off, no one feeding you lines. You're performing to empty space and trusting it will cut together with other people's performances shot at different times. Linz handles this remarkably well. His eye lines stay consistent. When he's looking at where an adult should be, he's actually looking at the right height and distance. His reactions time correctly to events that aren't actually happening during his coverage. This is technical craft that requires focus and spatial awareness. The criminals' degradation over the course of the siege is tracked through performance choices. They start clean, professional, put together. By the end, they're covered in various substances: paint, ice, soap, dirt, and their costumes are torn and disheveled. But more than the physical transformation, their performances show psychological degradation. They move from confident to frustrated to desperate to defeated. That arc is communicated through increasingly frantic body language, looser physical control, more emotional vocal delivery. They are coming apart and the actors show it through escalating chaos in their performances. Voice work matters in comedy, and each actor makes distinct vocal choices. Krupa gives Bopre a slight accent and a controlled, quiet voice that forces others to lean in and listen. A power move. Kihlstedt plays Alice with clipped, efficient speech that becomes more shrill as she gets angrier. Von Dolen gives Jernigan a higher register voice that conveys nervousness. Thornton makes Unger's voice deeper and slower, suggesting limited processing speed. These vocal distinctions help differentiate the four criminals when they are all wearing similar dark clothing during the siege. Linz's vocal performance as Alex is naturalistic, with a slightly nasal quality typical of kids his age. He doesn't project artificially or try to sound older than he is. When he's afraid, his voice gets higher and faster. When he's thinking, he talks to himself quietly. When he's determined, his voice steadies and drops slightly. These are organic vocal shifts that children naturally make, not performed choices, which makes Alex feel authentic. The film demands sustained physical comedy from the adult actors that's genuinely challenging. Taking pratfalls, getting hit with objects, being doused with liquids, all of this requires athletic ability, precise timing, and willingness to look foolish. All four criminal actors commit fully to the physical humiliation their roles require. They are not protecting their dignity or trying to look cool. They are letting themselves be completely debased for the comedy. And that commitment is what makes the claps work as entertainment rather than cruelty. Part 8. 17,000 words. The thematic underpinning of Home Alone 3 is simpler than its predecessors, but no less coherent. Competence versus dismissal. Alex is competent, genuinely, measurably smart and capable, but everyone in his life dismisses him because he's 8. His observations are treated as childish imagination. His warnings are written off as fever dreams. His intelligence is acknowledged abstractly but never actually trusted in practice. The film's entire engine runs on that frustration. What happens when someone who's actually right can't get anyone to listen? This theme resonates differently than Kevin McAllister's journey in the original films. Kevin was learning self-sufficiency and overcoming his fear of being alone. Alex already has self-sufficiency. He is comfortable with solitude, good at entertaining himself, skilled with his hands. His challenge isn't personal growth, It's external validation. The siege forces adults to recognize what he's been trying to tell them all along. He's not making things up. He's not overreacting. He sees clearly and his assessment is correct. The final validation scene with the FBI commendation isn't just a happy ending, it's the symbolic correction of every dismissal he endured. The film also explores surveillance and observation as power. Alex's primary weapon isn't physical, it's informational. He watches, records, documents, and that documentation becomes protection. The camcorder footage is insurance because it's evidence, proof that can't be dismissed like his verbal testimony. There's something prescient about this in 1997, before smartphones made everyone a potential documentarian. The film suggests that the ability to record and prove what you've seen is sometimes more important than physical strength or authority. An 8-year-old with a video camera can bring down international criminals if he is patient and thorough. Hughes, intentionally or not, taps into childhood powerlessness in ways that resonate emotionally. Every kid has experienced the frustration of knowing something adults won't acknowledge. Maybe it's not international spies. Maybe it's bullying at school, or a legitimate fear, or an observation about family dynamics. But that experience of being correct and dismissed is universal to childhood. Home Alone 3 literalizes that frustration and then literalizes the fantasy of being proven right so dramatically that denial becomes impossible. It's wish fulfillment aimed directly at the emotional vulnerabilities of its target audience. The criminals representing foreign threats gives the film an unintentional Cold War throwback quality. By 1997, the Soviet Union had been gone for 6 years, but the script still reaches for vaguely defined Eastern European North Korean villains as default bad guys. It's lazy screenwriting that dates the film immediately, but it also doesn't really matter to the story's function. The criminals could be working for anyone. The point is, they're professionals with resources versus one kid with ingenuity. The geopolitical backdrop is window dressing on what's fundamentally a David versus Goliath story. The film's relationship to technology is fascinating from a 2026 perspective. The microchip is treated as cutting-edge military tech. Missile defense systems are the height of classified innovation, and a camcorder is a sophisticated surveillance tool. All of this feels charmingly dated now, but was current when released. The film captures a specific technological moment, post-Cold War, but pre-internet ubiquity, where information could still be controlled and physical objects like microchips were how data was transported. Within a few years, the entire premise would feel obsolete. You'd just email the chip's contents and eliminate the MacGuffin. Legacy-wise, Home Alone 3 occupies a strange space in the franchise. It was profitable enough to justify its existence, but not successful enough to spawn immediate sequels with the same cast. The franchise would continue. Home Alone 4 came out in 2002 as a TV movie, then Home Alone, The Holiday Heist in 2002, and eventually Disney Plus released Home Sweet Home Alone in 2021. But none of them connected to each other narratively. The franchise became an anthology series built around a premise rather than characters, which is arguably what Home Alone 3 pioneered by rebooting instead of continuing. Critical reception was harsh. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 27% from critics, with common complaints focusing on the lack of charm compared to the original, the repetitive trap sequences, and the derivative nature of the formula. Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars, noting that while the traps were creative, the magic was gone. Critics generally acknowledge the film was competently made but unnecessary, a cash grab leveraging brand recognition without the elements that made the original special. But audience reception told a different story. The film found a considerable audience, particularly on home video, where it became a staple for younger kids who didn't have the nostalgic attachment to Culkin's performance. For a generation of children growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, Home Alone 3 was their entry point to the franchise, and they loved it without qualification. It became comfort food viewing, a movie kids would watch repeatedly, because the formula delivered exactly what it promised, satisfying traps and comeuppance for adult villains. The film's influence on the franchise future was significant. By proving you could make a Home Alone movie without the original cast and still turn a profit, it gave Fox license to continue exploiting the IP indefinitely. Whether that's good or bad depends on your perspective, but it established the template for how studios would handle successful family franchises going forward. Mine them for sequels, reboots, and reimaginings as long as the brand name has recognition. From a craft perspective, Home Alone 3 demonstrates that formula filmmaking can be executed with competence and care, even when it lacks inspiration. Gosnell directs efficiently, the actors commit fully, the technical elements are polished. It's a professional piece of work that does exactly what it sets out to do without reaching for anything beyond its mandate. There's value in that kind of craftsmanship. Not every film needs to be innovative or groundbreaking. Sometimes delivering a familiar experience with reliability is enough. The film's view of childhood is more pragmatic than the original sentimentality. Kevin McAllister's story was about family bonds and the importance of home. Alex Pruitt's story is about self-reliance and the failure of institutional protection. His family, his neighbors, the police, all the systems that should protect a child fail him, and he has to protect himself. It's a darker premise masked by light comedy, and it reflects a slightly more cynical worldview. Hughes was writing this after years of family dysfunction in his personal life, and perhaps some of that realism bled through. The trap sequences, beyond their entertainment value, represent a specific American cultural fantasy about property defense and self reliance. The idea that you can fortify your home and defend it against all threats through ingenuity is deeply embedded in American mythology. Home Alone films literalize castle doctrine taken to absurdist extremes, not just defending yourself, but creating elaborate punishments for anyone who violates your space. It's a power fantasy about control over your environment that resonates with audiences who often feel powerless. The film's treatment of violence is worth examining. These traps would cause serious injury or death in reality. Paint cans to the face cause skull fractures. Bowling balls to knees destroy joints. Ice water freezing incidents cause hypothermia. But the film presents all of it as reversible cartoon violence where people pop back up relatively unharmed. That disconnect between realistic depiction and impossible recovery creates an interesting cognitive dissonance. We are meant to enjoy the violence while simultaneously not taking it seriously, which requires a specific viewing mode that children naturally adopt, but adults have to consciously choose. Financially, the film's success validated mid-budget family comedies as viable holiday releases. The 32 million budget and 79 million return represented the kind of modest profitability that studios increasingly chased in the late 90s. Not every film needed to be a blockbuster. Sometimes doubling your budget was sufficient, especially when home video and cable licensing added back-end revenue. Home Alone 3 helped establish that calculation. The film's gender dynamics are relatively progressive for 1997 family entertainment. Alice is the most dangerous criminal, the most athletic and persistent. She is not sexualized or diminished. She is a genuine threat who nearly catches Alex multiple times. Having a woman as the primary physical antagonist in a family film wasn't common at the time, and the film doesn't make a big deal about it. She is just the most capable member of the crew, treated as such by both the narrative and the other characters. The chickenpox quarantine as setup device is clever beyond just justifying Alex's presence at home. It creates a ticking clock. At some point, the quarantine ends and normal life resumes. The siege has to happen within this narrow window when Alex is both isolated and believably unable to leave. It's elegant problem solving in the script that establishes clear parameters for when and why the action can occur. The film's Chicago setting grounds it in specific regional identity. The winter weather, the suburban architecture, the accents and rhythms of speech, these aren't generic American suburbia details. It's specifically Midwestern, specifically winter, specifically a particular economic class of suburb. That specificity makes the world feel more real than if it was set in an anonymous anywhere. Looking at Home Alone 329 years after its release, what's most striking is how it succeeded on its own terms while failing to escape the shadow of its predecessors. It's a competently made family comedy that delivers exactly the experience it promises. The traps are creative, the performances are committed, the pacing works, and the formula satisfies. But it's also fundamentally derivative, unable or unwilling to push beyond the template Hughes established in 1990. It's professional craftsmanship applied to risk-averse commercial filmmaking. For Raja Gosnell, this was an audition that led to a long career directing family films: Big Daddy, Scooby-Doo, The Smurfs. He found his niche making commercial entertainment for younger audiences, and Home Alone 3 demonstrated he could handle that material with technical proficiency. For Alex D. Linz, this was a career peak he'd never quite recapture. He continued acting through the 2000s, but never found another role with this level of exposure. For the franchise, this was the fork in the road where it stopped being about the McAllisters and became about the concept. The film raises an interesting question about franchise identity. When you remove all the original elements except the premise, what remains? Is Home Alone Kevin McAllister specifically, or is it the idea of a child defending their home through elaborate traps? The franchise answered that question by continuing with different casts and configurations, suggesting the premise is the identity. But something ineffable was lost in that transition. Call it heart, call it magic, call it lightning in a bottle. Whatever made the original special didn't transfer, leaving competent execution without inspiration. Home Alone 3 represents a moment in Hollywood's evolution toward IP management over character-driven storytelling. It's an early example of studios realizing they could reboot successful properties with new casts and keep the brand alive indefinitely. That approach has since become standard practice. Look at how Disney handles Star Wars and Marvel, how Universal recycles its monsters, how every studio has its cinematic universe. But in 1997, this was still relatively novel, and Home Alone 3 was testing whether audiences would accept it. They did, with reservations. The film made money but didn't become beloved. It found its audience but didn't expand the franchise's cultural footprint. It exists in a strange middle space, too successful to be forgotten, not successful enough to be celebrated. For kids who grew up with it, it's a nostalgia object. For everyone else, it's a footnote, the answer to a trivia question about which Home Alone movie didn't have Macaulay Culkin. But within that footnote status, there's a solid piece of entertainment craftsmanship worth acknowledging. The film does what it sets out to do without pretending to be more than it is. It's a sequel that became a reboot, a franchise entry that changed the franchise's rules, a family comedy that delivered laughs and satisfaction to its target audience. Its formula executed with competence, and sometimes that's enough.